The Gloriana set by ThebeMoon. Chapter 75. The Entrance Gate. Gates, of course, are boundaries, usually either trapping someone within or offering sanctuary from without. Neither seems to apply to Draco, since he has chosen to return to a place that surely hates him. In ancient times, gates were where kings sat in judgment, and it remains to be seen who Draco's toughest judge will be. Hogwarts grounds were shadowed, a half-moon weaving between shreds of clouds. Hermione didn't dare lie to her wand, so she brought Crookshanks. "Lead me to the front gate, Crookie," she whispered after they slipped through the castle's huge doors. The bushy orange cat set off on a winding path around the lake, then through the trees. The only sounds were the creaking of branches in the wind and the swishing of fallen leaves under her boots. It was very cold, and her breath puffed small and grey. The black stone posts of Hogwarts' entrance gate loomed suddenly before her, and Hermione stumbled backward, the hood of her heavy cloak slipping off her head. The moon peeked out from behind the clouds, and its light traced the wing shape of the gate's stone board. The moon also revealed a dark shape lying huddled just within the closed gate on the Hogwarts side. Hermione stepped closer, no longer needing the cat. Her steps crunched loudly on the gravelled path, but the shape remained unmoving. She drew her wand, wondering what she would find. Was he injured? Hermione knelt on the cold ground, heedless of the damp seeping through her pyjama pants. He was curled into a ball, wrapped in his cloak, hood drawn over their bright hair. She touched his shoulder, and his body shuddered and curled more tightly. "Draco," she said softly. "Draco, I'm here." No response. Hermione shuffled closer and gently peeled the hood away from his face, revealing pale skin and hair. She laid a hand on his cheek, and it was icy cold and damp with tears. His eyes were closed. "She's in that place." Draco's voice was thin and wavery. "We took her to that place. She's there all alone." He swallowed noisily. "They wouldn't let me stay." Hermione said nothing, just pulled a red handkerchief out of the tip of her wand and wiped Draco's face. Then she pressed her fingers against his cold cheeks. Draco shuddered again. "No," he said hoarsely, eyes still closed. "You shouldn't be here. I shouldn't have called you." "You were right to call me," Hermione said, looking down at him. An icy, trembling hand touched her fingers, then withdrew. "You're so warm." His eyes fluttered, but dark lashes shuttered his gaze. "My mother was warm once. My father leached it all out of her. He ruined her." Draco's cheeks were wet again. "I'll ruin you." "Nonsense," Hermione said in her bossiest tone. "You're not ruining anyone. You can't even keep me from meeting vampires. What makes you think you can mess me up?" But... Now Draco looked up, pale eyes shining watery in the faint moonlight. "You love me." Hermione sniffed. "Aren't we full of ourselves?" "You do," he insisted. He took a jagged breath. "I made you love me. I'm sorry." "Well, what's done is done. Can't be helped now," Hermione said, still striving for a light tone. Draco was shivering. She needed to get him into the castle. Crookshanks crouched nearby, eyes gleaming white and golden. "Cold," Draco said. "I was always so cold and hateful. Watching you. Why so warm? Mine. Everything I want is mine. I stole you." "You didn't steal anything." Hermione's throat felt almost too tight to speak. "I gave." "I haunted you. Pushed you." Yes, you're very spoiled and pushy," Hermione said. "Apparently, I like that." Draco blinked up at her, confused. "Let's go inside," she said softly, her hands on his arm. "No!" Draco twisted away and rose to his knees. gripped the gate's iron bars, his back to her. "I can't." "You must. You—" "No, no!" he cried. Hermione frowned, concerned. Was he in his right mind? "Draco," she said softly. "Draco." He released the gate and turned back to face her, but said nothing, just knelt there, panting. Hermione shuffled closer again and put her hands on his shoulders. "How long have you been out here?" she asked. It had to be nearly 3 a.m. "I arrived just before midnight," Draco said, his teeth chattering a little. He sagged against the gate and slid down until he sat on the ground, legs outstretched. "I had to enter the gate. I had to meet my probation. I promised." "Yes, you did," Hermione said in relief. "Well done. And you've been lying here ever since." Draco nodded. "You'll catch your death out here, let's—" I can't enter the castle," Draco said, his voice stronger now. "I'm the curse." He clutched her cloak. "I thought this year would be different, but no. Just more blood, more violence, more fear. What will happen this time? Who will be hurt?" His eyes rolled widely. "Will it be you? Are the muggleborns? The squeaky mice?" Hermione stared down at him, horrified. "You won't hurt anybody," she said. "Not me, not anyone else." Her voice sounded weak to her ears, however, and Draco certainly didn't look reassured. Shouldn't have gone to ask about her now, she thought wretchedly, wondering about it in that dementory fog. The moon emerged fully from the clouds again, bathing the grey ground with light. Hermione was still kneeling on the ground beside Draco, who sat with his back to the gate. You could now see a smear of blood on Draco's right hand, extending past his wrist. "Draco!" She raised her wand, removed the blood, then ran her hand gently over his palm. "How did you—" It was then that she saw it. The silver chain over his cloak, glinting in the moonlight, and hanging from the chain was a single curved piece of broken glass. "Draco!" He looked up at her, his silvery eyes truly focusing for the first time. "I've been wearing a Patronus," he said. "All the time, since Mother was arrested. Gave me strength." He swallowed. "I broke it to send you a message." He held out his hand, the cuts on his palm clearly visible. "Draco," Hermione said again. He shifted on the ground, leaning back against the bath. When he spoke, his voice was a bit stronger. "Tonight, that ball was all that kept me upright. I wanted to give it to Mother, but they wouldn't let me, and I needed it to—" "It's all right," Hermione said. She set her arms around him and put her cheeks against his. "You're so warm," Draco murmured. "How can you be so warm?" "Cow pajamas," Hermione said. "Please." I don't understand." His teeth were chattering. "Draco, I have to get you inside." Hermione was really worried now. She'd petrify and levitate him into the castle if she had to, but hopefully it wouldn't come to that. "No," Draco, still sounding desperate. "I won't bring evil into Hogwarts again." His hand convulsively moved to clutch the glass shard on his chest, and Hermione quickly blocked the movement with her own hand. "All right," she said, trying to sound reassuring. "We'll just stay here a bit. Here, let me show you something." Hermione sat on the cold, damp ground, her back to the gate, and Draco settled beside her like a small child, his head on her shoulder. She cast a warming charm around them, although it wouldn't last long in the frosty air. Then she slowed her breathing and leaned her cheek against that silky hair. She raised her wand and focused a small memory. The day at the confidential cafe when she told Draco about her hourglass spell. 20 pints will be lost tomorrow, and nobody will know why. "Expecto Patronum," he whispered, producing a tiny flash of silver on the tip of her wand. Draco gasped softly. "Specula bulla," she murmured, a charm of her own design. A tiny bubble grew out of the wand tip, expanding around the light, then fell off the wand into her outstretched palm. Hermione held it up, the glass still warm in her hand. Draco raised his head and stared. Without another word, Hermione vanished the glass shard on the silver chain and replaced it with the tiny ball. Draco looked down at the bit of Patronus on his chest. For a moment they said nothing, the only sound the rustling of the trees and creaking of iron bars. Then Draco's eyes met hers.
"I've been a fool,"
he said hoarsely.
"Despairing and weak.
Icy fingers gripped her hand.
I love you. I will always love you."
His grip tightened and his eyes shone like twin Patronuses.
"Tell me it's not too late. Tell me I haven't broken the object."
The tips of Hermione's fingers touched his cold face, sliding along that sharp, stubbled jawline. "Cracked it, maybe," she admitted. Draco shifted closer, pushing himself up and sliding an arm behind her.
"I'm so sorry,"
he whispered, his lips inches from hers.
"I was a fool to leave you. To think that would make any difference. It only made things worse."
Cold, rough palms cradled her face.
"You only found more danger. Oh, Hermione, if you only knew what I went through, alone, without you."
His mouth was stiff and cold at first, but Hermione warmed his lips with hers until his finally opened and she slid her tongue inside, her warmth mingled with his. Draco pulled her closer, and it was another timeless moment on the hard, cold ground against hard, cold iron bars, but nothing about that moment felt cold, but warm and soft and sweet. Hermione pulled away and looked at him. Clouds from their breathing mingled in the air. Draco seemed to come to himself. He looked around, blinking at the gate, the moon, the cat, at their position on the ground.
"It's freezing out here,"
he said. He frowned at Hermione.
"You'll catch your death of cold."
Hermione rolled her eyes and shifted to her knees, trying to pull him up, but Draco weighed a ton, and his muscles refused to respond. After a bit of grunting and scrabbling, he managed to get his feet under him and pull himself up using the gate's iron bars. He leaned against the post, panting. Hermione now stood in front of him, looking up into his shadowed face, her arms around his waist. "Can you walk?" she asked.
"Certainly,"
Draco said with a trace of his old haughty tone. He released him and he stomped his feet to get the blood moving. The moon drifted behind clouds again, leaving them in near darkness. "Groggy!" Hermione called, and the cat's glowing eyes drew closer. Draco slowly began to walk, staggering slightly, despite Hermione's supportive arm. They made good progress, but then Draco halted again, about 15 feet before the castle's great oak doors, flanked by burning torches. Hermione stood silently beside him, hands at her side.
Nothing but danger to the school,"
he said. "This castle has stood for 1,000 years," Hermione said. "It can handle a single neurotic former Death Eater." He backed away, leaving him alone in the torchlight. "Let the castle decide." Draco glanced at her quickly, then turned back to the castle. He seemed to brace himself and walk towards the doors, his figure black against the flame's golden glow. He stopped, framed by the pointed stone archways. Small, carved figures writhed within the door's square wooden panels, and the torches flickered. Hermione's breath caught. Would the castle reject him? Then the torch's flames leaped higher, and the carvings still. A thin black line ran up the center, and slowly, oh so slowly, the medieval doors creaked open with the scraping of oak against stone. Draco stood frozen, and Hermione didn't dare breathe. The doors rumbled to a stop, and he moved forward, his dress shoes' heels clicking on the white step. Draco entered the castle, and Hermione and Crookshanks followed. The entrance hall was quiet and dimly lit. Thieves, thankfully, seemed to be in another part of the castle. Draco turned to her and clasped her hands with still cold fingers.
"Don't you ever get tired of saving me, Hermione?"
"Never. I like to keep busy. Be smart.
Go back to your tower, princess.
Hermione hesitated, and he bent to brush her lips with his.
It's late. I'll be all right now.
Hermione bit her lip, considering, then nodded. There was no more she could do tonight. She squeezed his hand and released it, then began ascending the stair. Halfway up, she turned back. Draco still stood in the center of the entrance hall, his face upraised, a bit of Patronus twinkling on his chest like a tiny star. Draco gave her a stern look and made a tiny shooing motion with his head. Hermione sniffed. Fine. She met no one on the way to Gryffindor Tower. Not that she expected to at 4 in the morning, and the fat lady sleepily let her in. She crept into her and Ginny's bedroom and stripped off her freezing wet pajamas and socks. She pulled on her fleecy pink sheep pajama, then sat on the bed to towel the damp fog out of her hair. Finally, tucked into bed with Crookshanks, she thought of Draco's devastation at Narcissa's sentencing. His huddled figure at the gate, her Patronus reflected in his eyes. Draco standing tall before the castle's oaken doors. Her eyes slid shut. He's back, she told herself, and her mind responded mockingly. For now. To be continued. Next up, back to school again. Pansy is plotting. Thank you for listening to this chapter of the Gloriana set by ThebeMoon. If you'd like to stay up to date on upcoming chapters and stories, you can follow me on AO3, YouTube, or Spotify.